Hey, welcome to Gold's Garage. So this is episode 2 of our series of videos we're going to make showing as much detail as possible, starting with the bare block back from the machine shop, the thought process, the planning, and all the steps that we need to do to get the engine together and run nice. So we're making this little clip at the beginning of it, even though we made it later because in episode 1, we had some comments about backlighting or glare, and this one is actually, some parts of it are as bad as that, and I apologize for that. I don't know whether, because it's winter here now, it's bright outside, we're getting glare. This shop's got lots of windows in it, and we've been running around trying to block out glare here and trying to make the best shot we can. We'll work on that. We're not technical experts at presentation. But there's two things that are important about a video we strive for, and one is to have good content, and the other one is to have a good presentation. So hopefully the content will make up, in this case, for the presentation, the glare issue. We're working on it. What I am going to show you in this video is how to install a cam bearing, a frost plug, an oil plug, drill and tap, the hole for your oil plug, the secret little oil plug that goes under the main bearing that some people don't even know is there. So we got good content. We did think about, because of the glare, not publishing it, but there's too much good content not to. And then the next series of videos, we're going to go ahead and do all the measurements, install the crankshaft and pistons, and do all those checks right till this engine is running on the test stand. So without episode 2, it's not going to make much sense. So hopefully you can stick with us and watch it, and hopefully that you'll find some information in there that made it worth your while. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoy the rest of it, and we're working on our technical lighting glare issues as hard as we can. Hey, welcome back to Gold's Garage. So this is the second video in a series. What we promised, we're going to take you through this entire build. We started, episode 1 was when we brought the block back from the machine shop, and there's even episodes before that about how we diagnosed the problem on Paul's engine and how it's kind of evolved. He brought it to me originally to fix it, and now it's been bored and decked, and we're putting a brand new Eagle rotating assembly. So we've come a long way from where we started, but we're going to try to take you through as many detailed steps as possible and provide as much detail as we can, because a lot of that stuff, I made the mistake in the past of just assuming everybody knows that. Well, maybe some people don't know that, so I'm going to try and fix that today. So I'll cover off a couple of points. Just got, since yesterday, the block is painted. I've done some operations on it. I'm going to show that. And this morning I went to Performance Limited and picked up the Eagle rotating assembly. So we got all the parts here. I've got them laid out. Pleasant surprise, the rotating assembly, the pistons and rods are not full floating. They're pressed on, and they came pressed on already in that box. That's very, very, I've never seen that before. Usually if they're pressed on, you got it. In fact, I took all the parts to Old Nolan at Atchison's to leave the rods and pistons to press them on, and when we opened the box, they're already on. Nice surprise. So I'm going to talk more about that. Couple points, because I know I'm going to get, in the previous videos when we had out there, what should we do? A lot of comments. If you're going to rebuild it anyway, you might as well stroke it 383. And that is a valid option, and if you choose that option, you can certainly make a lot of sense out of it. It doesn't cost much more, but here's a couple of factors that I took into consideration, and I didn't even really offer Paul that alternative for a couple of reasons. First of all, yeah, the 383 rotating assembly is not a lot more. It's not an unreasonable amount more. So you're going to gain 28 cubic inches. You will probably gain 40 foot-pounds of torque and probably somewhere around 40 horsepower. And that's nice, except there's a couple things you have to do. If you do go with a stroker, you got to clearance the block, and that's another job. So we started off just trying to get Paul's engine running for him again. Now we're putting the rotating assembly. Now I got to do that. And also with a lot of these aftermarket rods, I haven't checked these ones. Sometimes the rods hit the camshaft. And that takes extra work too, because you got to put a trial in there, every piston in one at a time. You got to clearance it to make sure that it doesn't hit the camshaft. And you better get it right, because if it does, you're going to have a disaster. So it just goes on. The other thing is this. Paul has an S10 that weighs about 2,400 pounds. This is going to make well over 400 foot-pounds of torque. So that's less than 6 pounds of car per foot-pound of torque. It's going to be a rocket ship anyways. And when you step on the gas, you're going to spin the tires, whether it's a 383 or a 355. And so my feeling is it's plenty. You can make just as many good arguments about why didn't you do a 383, and that's fine. It's just a choice. But that's my input for what that's worth. The other thing is, every time I get one of these blocks home and I'm getting ready to prepare it, you know, I never cease to be amazed at how sharp these guys were that designed these things like 60 or 70 years ago. You know, I made this comment before. We think we're pretty smart because we make more horsepower than they did or whatever. Great. But how'd you like to design it from scratch? Not just design, you know, the package to make it the smallest possible package, as less weight as possible, expandable. There was a 265 when it was originally designed, same architecture, and you basically you can make a 400, 406, a 427 with the same architecture. So what a visionary. And not just to design the block, design the pattern, design the mold, the manufacturing process, where all these holes go, how do you get the oil in and out of it, how the water temperature flows to have, you know, homogeneous cooling and heating and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, I just had to make that point because I'm, you know, compared to what those guys did, we're just tinkering really when it comes down to it. So anyway, that's my comment. So I got all the stuff in today. Great big, nice big box. Can't see it from here. Eagle full rotating assembly. Everything that I need for a rotating assembly. Pistons, rods, bearings, rings, and crankshaft, of course. I haven't got to measuring all that. I'm still working on the block, but it even came, this is the balance kit. So something to remember, whenever you look at a part number, and not always, but usually the part numbers mean something. So B is for balance. This kit part number is B15402E030. The 1540 is the compression height of the piston. So pay attention to all that kind of detail because it can make a difference. And that's what I picked up on. I would have had 45 thousandths of piston to deck height if I hadn't noticed that. Okay, so and then the last three numbers, the suffix numbers of crankshaft bearing or crankshaft or piston or whatever are always, whether it's overboard or in the case of a crankshaft, ground undersize, either one. So, and this kit even comes, it's a balance kit, it even comes with the balance calculation of the balancing bob weight for it, the weight of the pistons and the weight of the combined kit, etc. And as I mentioned, the rods and pistons are all already assembled. And so one thing you got to do is decide where they go. So here's one thing to note. Everybody kind of knows that dot goes to the front. So if the dot goes to the front on this side, that's not going to work out. If you put it around on the other side, then the chamfer is at the back on 2, 4, 6, and 8 cylinders. The chamfer is at the back. On 1, 3, 5, and 7, the chamfer is at the front. So you got to have two things satisfied. You have to have the dot at the front and the chamfer at the front for the driver's side bank, and the dot at the front and the chamfer at the back for the passenger side bank. So I've marked all the pistons already. Fortunately, we had 4 of each, so it all worked out. So that worked out good. So what also happened, we got home last night and Ashton forgot to give us the frost plugs and the oil plug kit. So Nolan actually stopped by last night and gave me it's a half an hour from here, and he actually brought it and delivered it. And so I got some stuff done that I didn't plan to do. In the previous video, we showed primering and painting the block. So it is all painted now, and the cleaning process and all that was all done. One of the things you have to remember is to get at the back of the block, you have to take it off the build stand because you cannot get the frost plugs in at the back. And if you want to do a nice job of putting the cam bearing plug and that back cam bearing in, I prefer to do it. So I take it off the test stand, put it on a bench, get the back part done. Once the black box back on the build stand, now it's going to stay on here until the engine's finished. So what I've done is I put number 1 and number 5 cam bearing in. I'm going to put at least one of the other bearings and explain how that works. This little mystery plug that goes in your oil pressure line that diverts oil through your oil filter, I'm going to put that in, and I'm going to put one frost plug in for you. So before I go ahead, please like and subscribe. So we're working hard to grow our channel. It's hard work sometimes, guys. It slows down the process of building engines, but it looks like I got a pretty strong core of believers out there, and I just want to grow that core and try to provide you guys good information. So here's a plug that I mentioned in the previous video. Some people may not know about. It's just a 1/2-inch plug, and so just to demonstrate, I'm just going to grab this little tool here. So this plug, if you can see, it goes right through. This pipe can go right through here. So that's where the oil feeds into the engine. So what happens is, if I mentioned this in the previous video, there's a plug that goes in this little spot here. Now what it does, there's a hole at the very top that forces oil into the oil filter chamber. And then below that, there's another hole where it comes out of the oil filter and goes into the block. So without this little plug here, then none of the oil will go through the filter. The oil will just bypass the filter, take the path of least resistance. And I'm pointing that out because now normally if you take an engine apart, if it's running, it probably has that plug in it. But if you take it to a machine shop for hot tanking, they'll often take it out and you got to put it back in, or somebody's got to put it back in. So I'm going to try and get that plug in now for you. I don't really need it. We get a smaller hammer. Get a big hammer like that. So there we go, it's in. So you can see the oil hole above it, and so that plug forces the oil into the filter, and below that there's another hole, and then oil goes about its way to do its work. So wasn't a big deal, but it's pretty darn important that you do it. So that's done. So I'm going to do a frost plug fast, and then I'm going to do cam bearings because it's going to take a little longer. Yeah, my bench is a cluttered mess just because I got everything laid out here to show you guys, really. That's why it's like that. So for a frost plug or freeze plug or whatever else you want to call it whatever you like. I really don't care. It's fine. The guy that sold me this tool when I bought it, it said freeze plug on it. So, and freeze plug install tool. So I put a little bit of goop on it. They're all in except one, so I just saved one so I could demonstrate it, how easy it is. And the point I tried to make in the first video is there's a lot of things you can do yourself. And if you can do yourself, my default is whatever I can do myself, I do myself, because I hate paying anybody to do anything that I can do myself. So this is a job that you can do. It's not that hard. And I've made videos before. You can actually use a big socket instead of using this. So, but if you are going to put it in, there's numbers on it. You want to have the numbers right upside down. Now, they won't work any different, right, obviously, but it just makes you feel better if they're right. So I got to get around the other side of you, Alec. There you go. So it doesn't take much. A couple good hits. And it's in. That's all there is to putting the freeze plugs in. So the sealant, not everybody does the sealant. It's a little kind of belt and suspenders. Probably wouldn't have leaked without it, but it doesn't cost much to do that. So now cam bearing. So as I mentioned at the beginning, what I did was I took the engine off the stand yesterday, put the very back cam bearing in, and put all the frost plugs in the back, and put the cam plug in. And so cam bearings, if I can find them, are unique. So 1 and 5 are gone. When you open the cam bearing box, they are in an order. Okay, so you need to pay attention to that. And so I've already put in 1 and 5, so 2, 3, and 4 are left. So here's the code for it. So 1 is unique. It's got 2 holes in it. It's already in. I already got that in there. Okay, it's unique. You can't mess it up. 2 and the next one is the part number CH4-2 it will fit in either number 2 or number 5 location. And CH4-3 will fit in number 3 or 4 location. Now, that number is very, very subtle. I don't know if you can even see it on the video in the camera or not. I'm looking at it anyways. It's pretty subtle, but if you look hard with the light, you can find it. So the first thing I do is, before I even take them out of their spot, is make sure that number is correct, and then I number it so that it doesn't get mixed up after. So make sure we get the right ones in the right place. So here's another. So I'm going to put in number 4 for you. It's the furthest at the back, although it doesn't have to be, as I find my tool. So one of the nice things about this tool, and one of the reasons I put number 1 in from the back side, when I had the block off the build stand, I had it on the bench, and I drove number 1 cam bearing in, and now this part of my tool fits perfectly into that cam bearing, and it's a perfect guide to fit the other cam bearings in. So that helps you make sure you're not going to mess anything up. So you stay there, Alec, and I go around you. Okay, this side. Okay, so how we do that is you got to get the tool in there. And as you can see, this is going to fit right in there, and that's going to give me perfect alignment. So we got to get the cam bearing on the tool. So the proper way to have a cam bearing installed is, where's the numbers? I got to get a belt band. Hang on a second. Right back. So when the engine's upright, looking at the engine, the ideal place for the hole is around 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock, like that. But the engine's upside down, and one of the reasons I left this so I could demonstrate it, you have to have the crankshaft out to put the cam bearings in, and you can't see what you're doing. And so if I want to have that at 2 o'clock, the hole at 2 o'clock, and how does the hole work? Let's take a look at that also while we're at it. So I'll use this as a pointer. We're going to put in number 4. So the oil comes from the oil galley at the top of the engine into that annular ring. It goes around that ring and out here, and that's how you feed your main bearing. But the cam bearing itself seals that off, and this hole allows the oil to get to actually oil the camshaft itself, the oil the camshaft and the cam bearing. So that's how that works. So in order to make sure I get it in the right place, because I'm upside down, if I put it at 8 o'clock, okay, now my cam tool is going to cover this, so if I put a line there, when I turn the engine over, it's going to be at 2 o'clock, okay? And that's the ideal location. So why is that? It's for this reason. The forces of the valve springs are trying to push the camshaft to the bottom of the block, and so there's more of a gap at the top. So by having the hole there, you get a little bit of a wedge at the top, and that wedge compresses as the camshaft rotates on this side of it. Camshaft rotates, and that helps to float the camshaft and keep oil between the camshaft and the bearing. That's kind of the idea. So I want this guy, I'm going to use this line now, okay, and that's going to go in at 8 o'clock. So I just put this on here, and I got to pull back here. that's there. Now at this end, as you can see, my cam tool, and that's the nice thing about this cam bearing install tool. It's a custom tool and it only works on small blocks. I also have another adjustable one. This one's a lot nicer because you always got the right amount of force on the cam bearing, and you don't have to worry about adjusting it, and it usually goes all the time. Now the other thing I got to do is make sure I don't drive it too far. So we will actually do a test when we're done by squirting a little bit of oil here, and you could see oil come out the cam bearing hole if you got it right. You don't have much leeway. You saw the width of that slot, and so you got to get that hole somewhere into that slot. So let's try and drive it and see. So if I drive it until the cam bearing is just about out of sight, it's going to be pretty close. Okay, so as you can see, it's at 8 o'clock now, so it's going to be at 2 o'clock, and then why don't we do our little test? That's one way to do it. We do a little test, and you can see oil coming out the hole. So you know that you're in the right place. Oil coming out the cam bearing hole. So what did we do for you? We got a cam bearing in. The other two are the same thing. You just keep backing up. I've already got 3 out of 5 in, so the worst is over. I'll get that done off camera. Also yesterday I installed the oil filter bypass. That's not a big deal. It goes in any way that it fits. And these bolts are torqued to 20 foot-pounds. These are just the water drain plugs. Oh, okay, I got to show you one more thing. And that is the oil galley plugs. Okay, so get this guy out of here. Put that there. I'm going to rotate the engine around for you, Alex, so you can see it. I got to get this guy out. So I mentioned yesterday that you didn't really have to drill and tap the oil galley plugs, but I did anyways. It's not a big deal. You don't, first of all, I said that wrong. You don't have to drill anything, you just have to tap it. The tap size, the drill size is actually a little big for a 1/4 inch pipe tap. And so you don't have a big full thread, but it's fine. It's not going to fall out of there. And so these two are not a problem to drill and tap because, as you can see, the end of the line for the oil to feed the valve lifters is a long ways away from the front of the block. But this guy, okay, there's a little hole in there that feeds this cam bearing and this main bearing, okay? And if you put this guy in too deep, then you're going to block that hole off. And that has happened. I've seen it happen. And so I'm going to show you how to make sure that you didn't do that. So as soon as I find, here, I got it. So what I do, and once again, if this plug leaks a little bit, it's not a big deal. Some guys actually drill a very small hole in this plug with the thinking that you'll put extra lubrication on your timing gear and chain, and the thrust face of your timing gear goes against this face, so that oil will actually, drip right down on there. I don't do that. Pretty sure I just gave so much respect to the guys that designed this engine. I'm sure they thought about that, and 99% of engines running around don't have that, so I don't do that. But if you want to do it, it won't hurt. Now, as long as you don't make the hole too big, because if you do, you're going to drain off oil pressure. And this is the barrel that feeds your main bearings and your cam bearings. So you sure don't want to be starving oil from there. So if you're going to drill a hole there, I think you're talking a pretty small hole, 30 thousandths or something like that. Anyway, I don't drill them. So I'm going to show you how. I've already measured with caliper. So that hole is in there over 1/2 inch, and this plug is less than half, this a little under that. So when I tighten it up, as long as the plug is not more than flush. Whoop. There, that's tight enough. That's good. These are supposed to be about 15 foot-pounds. It's got Loctite on it, and it's not flush. It's not as long as it's not flush, and it's not proud of this surface as well. I think I'm going to give it a little bit more. There we go. That'll be fine. Okay, so I'll do the other two the same way, and that'll be, when I get the other cam bearings in, pretty much ready for starting to take dimensions for piston to cylinder wall clearance, main bearing and connecting rod bearing clearances and thrust clearances and all that stuff, which will be the subject of our next video. So hope you found that interesting and helpful. And you know, if you got comments, once again, I'll learn from your comments, but if there's something I missed, please feel free to ask me in the comments, and I'll do my best to reply and give you as much help as I can. That's what we're here for. Thank you for watching Gold's Garage.